Okay, now we're recording. So anyway, it mirrors the way that we did the first 3 weeks. So as you can see here, deliverables, you need to read. There's all of this stuff is under your, even the video links are in your course documents. So take a look at the MySQL cheat sheet and the MySQL workbench getting started video. And the assignment is basically install MySQL workbench. There's a link to it right here. Somebody has already, I saw, installed that. So thank you very much. Take an install of it installed on your computer and submit it. So that is your assignment for this week. I'd suggest that you kind of play around with it if you've never used SQL. And just so you guys know, the PowerPoint I'm going over tonight is right here as well. So there's a tutorial and some other things that you're going to see in the other weeks, but the PowerPoint is already out there. Okay, let me stop that, and then I will start the PowerPoint and we will get that going. Oh, not there. Yes, I would like you to start at the very first slide, gasp. Okay. Okay. So we are doing Introduction to SQL. So what is SQL? It's a relational database management system language, or some people call it a syntax, that's used to create, manipulate, and query data sets or data. In MySQL, there are 3 forms of SQL: DDL, data definition and data description language; DML, data manipulation language; and DCL, data control language. If you have any questions about stuff while we're doing this, just stop me. DDL is an SQL syntax or language that's used to create, view, or describe a table or database. So there are different commands. Have any of you worked with SQL, first of all? Gwen, I know you've done a lot of like programming boot camps. Have you done SQL? There we go. All right. I had a feeling you would have. Yeah, so you understand MySQL. So this is probably some review for you. So they have commands, and there's going to be some exercises next week where we do short exercises that use these commands. So some commands from this are the create, the show, or the describe command. So DML, as the name implies, this is an SQL syntax that is used to store, view, retrieve, and manipulate or modify data. So some examples are the insert command. And on that one, you'll see a command that says insert. The most common one I've seen is insert and then a thing into like a table column or a database. And then they have like the value for that. That's like a super simple insert. Or select, and you can do a select asterisk, and that means select everything. And then you can say this table or this column within this table. And that's how you can view and retrieve with select. And then manipulate, modify, or alter, alias, delete, and drop. Drop, I'm going to tell you right now, drop means remove. I have seen some really fantastically horrible mistakes made with the drop command. So yeah, Glenn, don't do it. Exactly. Drop is okay. So for an example, we were taking a class where they were talking about, you know how we just went over HTML, and they were talking about proper HTML sanitation for the input boxes. Well, if you're using a web page where you can input stuff and they're querying into an SQL database, if you don't do proper database or as a sanitization of what they can put in, they could put a command in there and say, drop blah, 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 if they happen to know what to drop it from. And there have been cases where if they don't have proper sanitization, whoop, they just dropped your entire table or database, and it is terrible. So Yeah, I've seen drop do some really bad damage. I've also seen drop used on accident when people think, oh, that's not what it is. And oops. And then they cry because they didn't. Delete is a whole different command. Yeah, drop is much more damaging. Delete, I prefer to use delete rather than drop if you can. Okay. And then DCL, this is an SQL syntax that's used to restrict unauthorized users from gaining access to the database. Note, however, it's not the same language, is that this language is not used to permit authorized users to gain access to the database. So permission, grant, access to view, no permission, or revoke are some examples of that. Okay, intro. So MySQL is an acronym and a personalized acronym, meaning my structured query language. So SQL is structured query language, and then basically MySQL is just stick my in front of it. It's a relational database management system that can be deployed as a free software and was open source software. Aside from MySQL, other popular relational database management systems are SQL Server, which is where I have most of my experience, but I have used MySQL. Oracle, MariaDB, PostgRE, SQL. There are some other ones out there too, but those are some of the top ones.
So this is the language they use for the SQL injection attacks.
You can use MySQL or you can use SQL Server. It just depends on what version. Basically, they do, you know how we talked about how they footprint and they do enumeration? You'll do that first with that little text box by throwing in some commands to see, okay, does this format work? Does this? And that'll tell you by doing that whether they're using a MySQL or an SQL Server. And once you figure it out, then they can start hammering it with the other stuff, and then they can proceed to do SQL injection attack that's actually successful.
Okay.
So on this one, development environments for SQL, MySQL, basically you have 3 development platform environments: MySQL Monitor, which is the console; GUI alternatives, Workbench, that's what you'll be using. And then there's web-based administration. So there's like PHP MyAdmin for that one. So there's different types of data within MySQL: integers, characters and strings, binary and text, decimals, float and doubles, enum and set, date and time. And date and time is its own monster. So do you know what they're talking about when they're talking about this stuff? Right before I do that, I want to see if it's, no, they don't. Do you know what they're talking about? Integers are your numbers. Okay. Binary and text. Decimals are, of course, numbers with decimal places. The time what you use decimals for, or what I've used them for is if I'm doing things with like IP records, sometimes you'll use those, or a lot of times it's finances. Character and strings, those are your text. Character and strings and binary and text are the ones that you use a lot for your just like a regular text. Float and double, I'm blanking on that one, but I will go look it up for you guys here in a minute. And then
ask Jen. She knows everything
Jen,
about this.
do you remember what float and double is? Yeah, see, that's the problem. Because I didn't use float and double very much. So I'm like, I don't remember what it is. And enum and set are like numbers and stuff. Or set, or you set stuff that way. Okay. These are different types of MySQL engines. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'll be doing. Is float. Yeah, it sounds familiar, but I can't remember what it is. I know it. I remember that I had to use it to set certain things, but I can't remember exactly what it was. So these are the 5 types of MySQL engines. You have MyISAM, ISAM, InnoDB, Merge, and Heap. So MyISAM table, this is format used for speed and reliability. It supports tables in excess of 4 gig in size, and it can also be used for the purpose of compressing files. ISAM, this is an indexed sequential access method, and this is the predecessor of MyISAM. It is primarily used for compatibility purposes. So basically, MyISAM has taken over. ISAM was the previous version. They usually put legacy in front of this one. InnoDB, this is the successor of MyISAM table type. It's the most sophisticated table in MySQL. It supports transactions and foreign keys and also allows multi-user access. In a nutshell, InnoDB helps in a fast query execution and also helps in preventing data corruption. Heap. This table type is used for creating and designing temporary tables and is extremely fast. So tables designed using this table are only available when the server is running and automatically erase when the server shuts down. The way I think about heap tables is it's like when you put something in memory and it's only there temporarily in memory, and then when you shut it down, it goes out of there. That's how I think about that. Merge, as the name implies, it's a table used to merge a collection of MyISAM tables together to give one singular table. So it's like you have 2 things here and they create this, and then you create another table with that. Okay. yeah, that's a more interesting version of heap. Yeah. So DDL, the language used to define and describe a table or database, which we were talking about with the create, show, describe, and use. So what do you use create with? You use it to create your database and table. So here's some examples. So when you see that MySQL thing, it's just like if you were at a command line prompt. So create database, and then you have the parentheses, DB name, and you see where that semicolon is? Semicolons end that particular line of commands. So if you have multiple lines that you're putting together, you stick your semicolon at the end and it goes down to the next string. Or this one is create database MyDB. I usually do the one with the parentheses just because that's how I was originally taught. Okay. And tables. So this is how you do tables. Create table, table name, create table, stud table. So having created your database, then you have to set a pointer to that database whenever you use it. So to do this, you do the SQL syntax use. So, and what this does is, so you create your database and then you set use so that any commands that you, any commands that you do from that point forward will be applied to that database. So you created your database, then you say, okay, use database name, and then that. And that makes that database the active quote unquote database. Now, I will say one of the most common issues I've seen is you've shut down your computer, you come back to it, and your database, your default database that you've been using has been, or your active database has been reset, and you forget to reset your database, so you put a whole bunch of commands in and you don't know why the commands are working, and you forget, oh, I forgot to set my active database. So that's something that I've seen quite a few times, and I actually did when I was first learning how to do this. So don't forget that you have to set your active database. So your tables can now be created into and stored. Tables can also now be accessed or modified. Okay, so show, used to show, reveal, or present the available databases and tables in a system. For instance, and assuming you have many databases, so if you do the command show databases, it presents you everything that you have available on your system to you. You have to remember that it's also dependent upon user rights. So it will say, this is everything that you have here. Here's all the databases that you have available. So say you've created 4 databases to practice with. Database 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you do show databases and it'll list all 4 of those databases out for you. So it also is used to show, reveal, and present the available databases and, of course, tables in the system. So show tables will present you with all available tables in your system, but it's better if you do it under a particular database. So you need, when you use this one, make sure that you set your active database like we were just talking about. Otherwise, it will be like, which database do you want me to do this for? So make sure you set your active database and then say show tables, and it'll say, okay, here's the tables you already have. Now, this is particularly helpful if you're tired and you're like, not sure, did I already put this table in? And that way you don't try to duplicate something you've already done. So you do show tables and go, oh, okay, yes, I've already done that. Or no, I need to do that. Okay, so describe is basically like the name says. It's used to view the detailed description of your table or the fields and their data types. So you have describe, parentheses, table name, or describe stud table. Then it presents you all the details of the specified tables in terms of size, data created, data types. It gives you a nice little row of everything there. Okay. Illustrating DDL and data types. So creating tables, and creating tables in MySQL, you use the create. So this is just an example of what we were talking about. So in order to do this, you do create table name. There's an extra parentheses there, but just in there. And remember what I said about the end of so basically this whole thing, there's a comma, that whole thing is one statement. And after where you see the semicolon, that's where the whole thing ends. So on this one, you're creating a table, field 1, you put your field 1, your field data type, and then you say how big you want it. Field 2, field data type, how big you want it. Last field data type. And you don't put a comma after that one because you want it to know, okay, this is my last field. And then you have the ending there to tell it, okay, that's the end of it. You hit enter, and then it puts these in there for you. Does that make sense so far? We're falling asleep. We're drilling on the keyboard. Ow. I have all my kitties have been very cuddly, so they miss their friend. Yes, I know, you're gonna come help. None of this makes sense and it's all in French. Rewatch the video over and over again. Honestly, the best thing you can do with SQL is to do it. That's the only way to do it. Or I've got some videos there. I will go out and find some more for you if you guys are having a hard time with it. And we can work through and do practice together too. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
So part of me is just wondering if there's any particular reason other than like that was just the way it was set up when they created the MySQL. But how come HTML uses the opposing direction, like I call them alligator mouse, but the greater than symbols, and MySQL just uses the single direction one, if that makes sense.
I honestly don't know whose idea that was, but yeah, basically it was when they set this programming language up, that's how they decided to set it up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, there's probably some programmer out there that had a specific reason for it, but I don't know on that one. Okay, so here's an example. So let's create a personal data file for holding people's data. So create table P file. Then we have our names. So the name var character. So that's variable character, and you want it to be 15. You want it to have 15 character spaces. Address var character 25. That means that you have 25 spaces of variable character. ID number character 11. Age integer, that's a number 2, basically just to give them 2 spaces, because the chances of them having 3 on that one are yeah, that could have been they got tired of having to have those on there. And then there's what a num is. So basically a num is basically you give them two different choices. That's what it is. So, and this is the beginning of your statement, and this is the end. I forgot that on MySQL there's that one. See, in SQL you don't have to do that first parentheses, end parentheses, but you do on MySQL. I apologize. MySQL is just slightly different. So this is what it would look like to hold this data file here. So let me stop this and I will type it out in. I think the other one does. Hold on 1 second. Let me get back to the. Yes. Let me get back to the program. I'm trying to find my one that has some nice color changes so you guys can see how it's supposed to be. There we go. No, of course not. It's visible. All right, we'll just use Notepad for this one. So we're going to do create table. Let me share. You can watch me type. If you really want to, you can watch me type. All right, can you guys see that one okay? It's not too small. Yep. All right, so create table EF or P file. Names. I know it's not pronounced this way, but I always think bar char, just so I remember, that CH. Okay, now one thing I will tell you, when you're doing these, you notice how it says ID underscore number. When you're doing the names on the table fields, you want to do underscores, because if you do spaces, there are certain legacy versions that do not see that. So when you're doing an enum, you give it two options and you put those between the single quotes. Oh, whoops. And then you have your end and there. Okay, does that make sense?
Can enum be only two options, or is it as many
You know,
options?
enum can be more, it can be more than two options.
All right, that was. Well, I was just wondering.
Yeah, you just have to put them between those quotes. Usually it's only used for two or three options, but yeah, as long as you set those options right there between the two quotes, you should be just fine. So, okay, does that make sense to everyone so far? We can move on to the next concepts. All the yes. Looks like all the yes. Okay, let me stop sharing this and I will reopen the slideshow. Okay, you guys see the slideshow okay? Should be back up. And of course it goes right back to. Okay, so this is where we were. Okay, so DML insert for inserting values. We do the insert into values to populate our data into the table file. And so you have, of course, you have to do that after you create the table. So remember that. So insert into P file, that's the thing we just did. Names, address, ID, DOB, this, and you'd have to do it in this order. Values, and those values are, and you have to see those single quotes. Those say in between those single quotes. Okay, so let's follow above. So we're inserting into the P file the values. Stop. Stubborn redhead. Aid for the name. Address, they're just doing 22 or this one. ID number, we have that nice little ID number here. Date of birth, they'd only put 45. And then sex, female. Okay, so and when you're adding values, remember that this is very literal. You have to, the order that you put those up there, you have to put the values in the same order. You can do it repeatedly using the up down arrow keys when you can edit them from there. Okay, select clause. This is used for viewing and retrieving things that you already have stored in the data in the files. So select all from, which is the most common. Select specific from. Select all from where. Well, we'll get into this in a minute. And then select specific from where. Hopefully we have. Yes, good, we do. To view, so to select all from clause, so select all, when you see that asterisk, that means select all. And then you have, so that means you don't need all the dot to dot. So just select asterisk, that means select all. So in order to do select all from that place, you do select asterisk from P file and it'll select everything from that and show it to you. It's not case sensitive. If there's any output, it goes out. So what if you want to be specific in your fields to view? Then these you do have to be careful about spelling and spelling errors. So select the name. It's not very good. There we go. Select names or addresses from P file. And then, so if you remember that thing that I typed out, the names thing and the addresses, it should select those. Or you can do select if you're looking for just one specific column, or you can say select this from here. You can get pretty specific about your, usually it's used to select a column within a table or a table within a database, things like that. Okay. So they're explaining another version of the filtration. So my data no doubt consists of male and female. Assuming I have the intention of reaching out to male friends only, how would I, so this is talking about the selecting with where clause. So you have to filter the names and addresses, but only male friends. So on that, this is what you would do. Select from where clause. So select names and addresses from P file where sex equals, it would, well, it doesn't say male. And you remember in the code we had the M, you can't just randomly put something there. You have to remember how you actually programmed it. Exactly. So if you have whatever it is you have that is programmed in, if you can't remember, you can go say, okay, what is the information from this columns from P file say? And go, okay, so this is formatted as M and F. Well, I want to select the names and addresses from this P file, but only those names and addresses where the sex column equals M. And that's how you do the where clause. Okay. Does that make sense on the where clause? Yes. Yes, it does. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. So you could do where equals, so basically do the same thing, but where age equals, and you can use, like say, you only want to have the ones where the age equals 18 or 20 or 21, and then it'll pull everyone with that age. You checked out. It's okay, you can rewatch. So the where clause is basically used for those things. You can also do a less than or equal to the two if you want to. Yeah, good point. Wake up. So you can do rather than equal to, you have to do a specific thing. You can do a where less than, greater than, or you can do less than equal to. There are lots of different ways to query that. So on this one, they're giving us I want to know friends that are aging. Lovely. Why? Maybe I just want to know their job status. They should be nearing retirement now, and we should plan for that. So if yes, how do I find your friend? So select all, that's your asterisk, from P file, where the age, so this is is greater than or equal to 60, okay? So that's what I was talking about there. So anybody that's 60 or over, this is going to pull that information. Does that make sense? I did not write these slides. I'm not exactly sure who wrote them, but I pulled them from a previous professor's class. So I apologize for some of the typos and stuff, but
The belief that we'll get to retire someday.
yeah, the belief, yeah. The erroneous belief that any of us will retire. My dad retired for exactly 2 years before A, he got bored, and B, I think my mom would have shot him, not really shot him, but he just got bored. He's one of those people that has to be busy all the time. So he had to go find something else to do.
I was just making a comment about we can't even afford to buy houses right now.
Right?
We're
Yeah.
never going to be able to retire.
I know. I feel bad for my niece because she's like, That's a nice dream, but you know, yeah, no, it's real. And I don't know very many people that retire at the age of 60, if that. All right. So that is it for our basic concepts. Let me expand this because it shut it down. There, now I can see y'all. All right, so does that make sense? If you want, I can run out to W3 with you guys and go through some examples. You're in fetal position for today. But next week we will also be going through some of those as well. Are you guys okay on what we have learned for the basics? Gwen's good. Something tells me Gwen's going to do really well in this class.
I hate HTML.
Well, you're done with HTML at least.
Yeah.
Now we're on to SQL. Yeah, SQL will require more videos. HTML, because it's super basic. SQL for me, when I started to get into the and I won't do this to you guys, when you get into table joining and key assignments, and I started to, like, you know, face desk on that one. So yeah, there are a lot of good ones out there for SQL as well. I will start throwing some extras. If I find some really good ones, I'll stick them out in the documents page. I will also throw some stuff out on the Discord for the resources section. Gwen, if you run into anything you think is good, please throw it out there on the same section.
Why do you hate us, Gwen? Why would you say things like that?
Because they actually know what they're doing.
Exactly. Let us find out, just like the rest of the world did. Let us just find out that this is going to be terrible.
You want to face your firing squad blindly? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I mean, if you anticipate the firing squad, it's a
It's a
lot
lot
worse
worse.
than just the bullet suddenly coming and putting you out of your misery. There's
No,
a re
no bribing Gwen to do your homework. I'll be able to tell. When people program, it looks very similar, especially when you do SQL.
what are you saying? You think that we can't reach Gwen's level of programming?
No.
That's fair.
3 weeks, technically. So we're doing SQL for 3 weeks, then we're doing PHP, I think, is the next one. But yeah, if you guys have questions, I'm going to stop this because that's where we are for the lecture portion, and then we can just talk questions.